on this edition of In the Life.
Celebrating 25 years of the Lesbian Herstory Archives. Out on Frat Row.
I thought it was nice.
And San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown.
I believe gays and lesbians are asking to be treated as blacks have asked to be treated.
All this and more on the season premiere of In the Life, America's gay and lesbian television news magazine.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Emmeringen Foundation. Additional support provided by Michael A. Leppin, Jeffrey B. Soroff, the Gill Foundation, the Lily Auchincloss Foundation, the Michael Palm Foundation, the Arch and Bruce Brown Foundation, the Mitchell Gold Company, in the hopes of eliminating all types of fear and prejudice, and the annual support of In the Life members like you.
Welcome to the season premiere of In the Life. Hi, I'm Katherine Linton. As this episode airs, the countdown to the new millennium is well underway. For many people, anticipation for Y2K brings about a whole range of emotions, from nostalgia for what was to anticipation for what is yet to come. The gay men and lesbians you'll meet on tonight's program represent both the past and the present, but all have a hand in paving the way towards the future. For example, we're bringing you this broadcast from the Lesbian Herstory Archives in New York. Later in the show, we'll profile this institution, which for 25 years has been making sure that the past is not to be lost to the future. And in our focus on the younger generation, correspondent Tanya Barfield profiles a Chicago theater company that is winning acclaim for its production about the experiences of young gay men and lesbians.
I'm a teenager. I want to go on dates. I think boys are cute. I want to date cute boys.
Creating plays based on the actor's personal experience has a history in theater, with the chorus line being one famous example.
Plus, correspondent Paul Mueller talks to some college students about going Greek, either by forming gay fraternities or by coming out in straight ones, and in the process, redefining that traditionally heterosexual bastion of male bonding. But first, an update on a story that we first brought to you in April about a court case which pitted the nation's airlines against the city of San Francisco. The airlines were opposed to a 1997 law which required that all companies doing business with the city provide same-sex domestic partnership benefits to their employees. Last May, a federal court judge upheld the ordinance, and since then, several airlines have begun to change their policies. Correspondent Jonathan Capehart talks to some advocates for change, including a well-known and outspoken politician.
They did exactly what should have been done at the original passage, and that is embrace the idea of equal justice, equal benefits to all of its employees, whether persons of the same sex or persons of opposite sex.
United, along with the 26-member Air Transportation Association, argued that a city or a municipality could not mandate internal policy for a company doing business nationwide. And even with its landmark decision to offer domestic partner benefits, United continues to fight its case in appeal.
I think that was a very interesting move on their part and really quite smart. I mean, we had said from the beginning that United could implement the benefits if it wanted to and still continue with the lawsuit, because the premise of the lawsuit is that the airlines are federally regulated as an industry. The company must have decided that there was a line beyond which they were going to take this action. And I think it was a very classy thing for the corporation to do, because they also extended benefits globally, which is an unusual move for a company of that size.
I think it's important to recognize that this little city and county has literally changed the world, because not only did United Airlines and subsequently other airlines agree to providing these equal benefits for the San Francisco employees and their domestic partners, but they're doing this worldwide.
The San Francisco legislation may well be having a substantial impact on domestic partner benefits across the country. When this decade began, about a dozen companies were offering domestic partner benefits. A few years ago, the number had grown to as many as 500. Today, it's close to 3,000. But the road to United's decision was a contentious 3-year process.
Supervisors Leslie Katz and Tom Amiano and Susan Leal were the lead sponsors in this legislation, which mandates that businesses that contract with the City and County of San Francisco must provide to its employees and their domestic partners the same equal benefits that employers provide to employees and their spouses.
I signed it into law, and then of course lawsuits ensued because many of the persons affected by it did not wish to have their businesses directed by any ordinance passed by the people of this city.
And at around that time, a group of local activists, the same individuals who actually brought this legislation to our Board of Supervisors in 1996, they formed Equal Benefits Advocates. And this was a grassroots organization which then proposed that we have a boycott of United Airlines. We did that with the assistance of the Human Rights Campaign.
We endorsed that boycott, and I think that also added to the pressure, the cumulative pressure on United to do the right thing.
The Human Rights Campaign also assisted United with Pride, the airline's gay employee group.
We wrote a domestic partner policy, a sensitive to the company, talk to them about how we can implement the benefits, so forth and so on.
United with Pride also became an important resource for the city.
They came to us and served us with subpoenas to give depositions as an explanation of how we feel we are being discriminated against as gay and lesbian employees. And I gave the story about when I received a call a year ago last April on a Sunday morning at 3 a.m. From my sister-in-law. And she told me that my parents were in an automobile accident, my father was killed, and my mother was in intensive care. Well, I was pretty shooken up. And I knew I wanted to go and be by my mother's side right away. So the company has a special benefit called emergency travel. I asked to be put on the next available flight, and I said, I'd also like a ticket for my domestic partner. And they said, no, I'm sorry, we don't have that benefit. And I told that story in the deposition. To this day, I really feel that perhaps my father's senseless death helped people see the pain and suffering that discrimination brings.
It became very clear as the court consistently and continuously made its rulings that United was slowly but surely being left without any rational reason for failing to implement domestic partners' benefit.
The fact is also that the San Francisco law has pushed some companies to be first in their industry. And then we've seen that cascading effect.
Companies like IBM, Bank of America, Xerox, organizations that prior to the ordinance actually volunteered to step forward and in many cases help us shape the ordinance to make it work. It says to them, thank you very much. To those who had not come to the table, so to speak, it says if you want to do business in San Francisco with San Franciscans, you'd better get with it as it relates to equality of law.
We're in a very tight job market. Unemployment is at about 4%. Companies are finding that they need to offer better benefits packages to attract and retain really good employees. And this is one way. It's very low cost, and it says to workers, we truly value diversity in all its manifestations. And we can continue on this track and push for equality in the workplace at the grassroots level, where individual people have just a huge say, a great deal of power, and they can win.
It's kind of like a Stonewall day for us out here in United Airlines. This is our Stonewall. So, you know, it's maybe 10 years from now we're going to look back and say, wow, those were the days when we were in the trenches.
San Francisco's demonstration of inclusion is where the system is headed and where it must go, and where it must, in the early part of the millennium, where it must reach.
The Village Voice recently called me the lethal-tongued Marvy Margaret, but that's not the only reason I think they're hip. In 1982, The Voice became the first employer in the United States to offer domestic partner benefits to its lesbian and gay employees. Today, there's a rapidly growing legion of companies who feel that offering these benefits is good for business and the right thing to do. A host of websites offer information about achieving domestic partner benefits in the workplace. To find the links, visit the In the Life website at www.inthelifetv.org. This is Margaret Cho, and you're watching In the Life.
Back in the 1970s, lesbians became a visible political presence in American life. Despite this, or some might argue because of this, lesbian history was often distorted or altogether undocumented. That's why a group of lesbians decided that they themselves should present and preserve their own stories.
We began talking about how easily our history had gotten lost.
That we didn't want our story to be told by, quote, a patriarchal history keeper. I didn't want our story to be told by those who called us freaks to begin with.
And that if we didn't do it, nobody was going to do it for us.
Joan Nessel and Deb Adel are two of the founders of the Lesbian Herstory Archives in New York, which is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. For all of those years, they've been collecting the writings, photographs, publications, T-shirts, buttons, in fact, all of the materials that tell the many histories of lesbian lives. And for almost 20 of those years, the entire collection was housed in Joan Nessel's own apartment.
This wasn't going to be a one-night stand. It was going to be a long-term relationship. We had a commitment to the archives that, one, it had to be a lifelong commitment, because just think, if an archives doesn't outlast at least one generation, it's not an archives. So it started in a back room, and my mother was living here at the time. And it was this, we'd have these meetings around the table. My mother would come out without her teeth in, and she'd say, very good, girls, very good.
If it's done by a lesbian, we collect it. If it's thought about by a lesbian, we collect it. If it's written by a lesbian, if it's touched by a lesbian, we collect it. We have papers and diaries and journals. We have photographs.
Traditional archives have been about famous people. And from the beginning, that was not our view, that this was an archives that belonged to the people who lived its history. In the life of Mabel Hampton, which is, for me, at the spiritual heart of the archives, captures that. Because in traditional history, Mabel Hampton's story would not be told. She was a domestic worker for most of her life. She was an entertainer. She was a participant in the Harlem Renaissance. And I know Miss Hampton, and this is harder for me to talk about. At one point, Miss Hampton worked for my mother, and that's how I met her. And she was the first lesbian woman I ever knew. And the courage this woman had, as you would ask Mabel later in life, when she was here with the archives and she was living here, women would make pilgrimages to see her on Thursday night, and they'd sit at her feet, and she she loved the ladies, she loved the girls, as she called them, and they'd say, well, Mabel, when did you come out? And she'd say, what do you mean, when did I come out? I was never in. A few years ago, my lover then found a T-shirt, and the T-shirt was about famous black women in history, and it listed all the famous women, Sojourner Truth, and the last name on that list was Mabel Hampton. So in her 80s, she became this really out gay activist.
In 1991, after years of planning and fundraising, the Lesbian Herstory Archives bought this building in Brooklyn, New York.
We did a lot, as a group, a lot of fundraising in order to get this building. We had people giving us small donations, and we were able to put down half of the building, really, half of the cost of the building at the time of purchase, from donations 99% of which were 25, 55.
Eventually, those small donations enabled the archives to pay off the entire mortgage.
That was a very exciting moment for us, to really realize that we could claim the mortgage, tear up the mortgage, and not be beholden to any bank or any outside group, that this was our building, the Lesbian Communities building. Here we are on the first floor in the parlor, and the books and materials that we have in this room really represent the most traditional sort of library. We have a vast collection of subject files ranging everything from newsprint to pamphlets to flyers about lesbian activities and events. And then over here we have a very special collection. This we call the Red Dot Collection. It was the library of the New York City chapter of the Daughters of Bilitis. And it really represents what lesbians were reading in the 1960s, 1950s and 60s, and it's a wonderful collection. That's the Lesbian Survival Collection. They're a wonderful collection of paperbacks from the 50s and 60s.
And I had read them myself when I came out in the 50s. That was all there was. And they were read all over this country. In fact, they were bestsellers. These were the secreted books. Some of them were very powerful. They were handbooks on how to survive as a lesbian woman.
Women who wrote under assumed names and women who wrote using their own names. They had absolutely no control of the text, the title, or the content.
If there was a sex scene between two women, a woman had to lose her child, her job, or die. So we read around the markings of hatred and control and found remarkable things.
Here we are in the dining room. We use it for exhibits. We have tapes, photography, flat art, posters, graphics, and an extensive videotape collection. The archives is run by a coordinating committee. We meet every 3 weeks, and we all sign up on the calendar for the days we're actually going to staff and be here. We don't have any paid staff. We don't have any plans at this point to have paid staff. We are part of the community, and it's our community who will keep us going. And it's absolutely paid off.
We had decided early on that the Lesbian Herstory Archives would not be what we call a role model collection, meaning that we wanted the stories of all lesbian women. And if they were sex workers, we wanted that story. And if they were S&M women, we wanted that story. All of this got even more complex when just a few years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we got the collection of a woman, a lesbian woman, who had been an FBI informant in the 50s, informing on labor movement groups. A woman who had spent much of her later life in Provincetown, ran one of the most famous lesbian tourist spots in Provincetown, and was very loved by that community, and her past very little known. And I remember one woman saying to me, very fervent woman saying, yeah, well, if there was a lesbian Nazi group, you wouldn't want their papers. And I, as a Jew, saying, we certainly would. One, we need to understand. You know, it's an uncomfortable collection, but it's important.
Now with its diverse collection and own rich history, In the Life congratulates the Lesbian Herstory Archives on its 25th anniversary.
The fact we're still here after 25 years is just amazing.
In February 1999, a casting call went out to teens in the Chicago area. If you were lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, questioning, or an ally, and you had an interest in acting, the folks at About Face Theater were looking for you. Since its founding in 1995, About Face has quickly emerged as an award-winning company. This year, the artistic directors teamed up with Horizons, a lesbian and gay youth services agency, for a special theater project called First Breath.
I saw it in a newspaper ad, and I didn't read the newspaper ad carefully, and I thought it was just a new play about gay youth. And I came thinking I was going to be auditioning for a show, and then they told me what it was really like, and I was like, oh, well, that sounds even more interesting.
We've been doing educational work at About Face since our founding. In 1995, we've been going to high schools and doing outreach work. From the feedback we got from students and teachers, it seemed to be a very effective program. The kids were really hungry to talk about gay and lesbian issues.
I didn't even know what gay was till high school, till now. I just thought gay was a boy who liked to play with dolls and hung out with girls a lot.
In 1997, About Face became Chicago's only resident gay and lesbian theater, making its home at the historic Jane Addams Center Hull House. With an artistic staff of 7, About Face is boldly paving the way for new voices in theater.
I'm a teenager. I want to go on dates. I think boys are cute. I want to date cute boys.
Creating plays based on the actor's personal experience has a history in theater, with the chorus line being one famous example. This workshop approach was used by About Face when developing the show with its 17 young thespians.
The show grew out of 6 months of workshops with the kids where they'd come in once a week on Saturdays from 2 to 5.
We did a lot of exploring of stereotypes and gender issues and just all sorts of stuff in the workshops.
Well, you don't look sick. You don't have AIDS. You're not gay.
The first week was risk-taking, and then it was like fear and love. And
I'd share the stories in small groups and then turn them into performances that they'd perform back to the whole group.
When I came out to my parents, something died.
Everything changed.
Dreams were killed. I disappointed them.
And we would be, running around the workshops, frantically scribbling, trying to make sure we got down what they had said.
I knew that queer wasn't wrong.
We really focused on letting the kids build a community and create a safe place for themselves where they could share these stories and get personal about, their lives with each other.
I really didn't want to be gay. I felt guilty because I knew I had one of the worst kinds of homophobia, the kind inside of me.
We made it a point that we weren't just discussing sexuality, but we were discussing everyday life within the realm of how sexuality sometimes affected it and sometimes didn't.
And then the big day came.
Dun, 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 dun. Congratulations, Mr. 83FG11T. You have now passed the test. You are now officially negative.
Issues like AIDS and coming out are very important. It was also important to incorporate everyday things that teenagers deal with, such as finding a date to the prom and having a crush on someone and everything that we all go through as gay teenagers or straight teenagers.
It is so crazy, this whole prom date, big major event in your adolescent life. And most of my girlfriends are going with their boyfriends in these big poofy fairy tale land dresses, and it's coming up really soon. Yeah. Why don't you take me? Yeah, whatever.
Everything we did was a part of everyone else. We'd all experienced it either ourselves or through each other.
Marty, baby, please think twice before you take that pill.
A surprising thing for me was the level of conversation that we were able to have about all of these issues, that we certainly weren't introducing things to them. We would just lay it on the table, and the response that we would get to questions was overwhelming.
The young cast credits past generations of gays and lesbians for the opportunity they have today with About Face.
This show to me is like a thank you. To the audience, because when I'd always say when I'd hear, a lot of adults saying, oh, I was not able to do that at your age, and I'm so glad that you can do that at your age. And I always tell them, well, we can do it because of you. Because when you guys eventually came out, you guys set up these programs for us to go to, and this is us now, thanks to you guys.
Over and over, they have no rights. Until finally I realized, I have rights. It's great to get up there and tell your story to people and have them want to listen.
For the teens in First Breath, being part of this production has been a rewarding and life-changing experience.
I don't judge anything anymore. I just observe it. And I don't judge it anymore because there's really no reason to. That's what the show's taught me, and I hope that people learn that from the show.
I think it also has given all of us a lot more courage to face the world around us and to face who we are.
My grandparents came to the show, and I wasn't out to them, so this was my whole coming out experience.
My coming out story was like the second group day we had when I had to come out to everyone as being straight, and everyone's like, you know, I was like, okay, I'm sorry.
There's a lot in the show about love, what love is or isn't. Although there may be many different sexualities, there is only one love. And they were all sweet.
Cool.
Yes, my daughter's in the show, and I'm very proud of her.
It's so powerful.
Inspirational.
It's really impressive.
Kids need to see these types of things to understand what goes on in their lives.
It had been an idea since we formed the company, but we sort of came together and went, what is it that we want to do with the theater? What's the heart of it? And we're like, it's that youth project. That's what we've got to do. And both of us just started talking about how that would have changed our lives, how much more open we could have been, and further along, you know, if you can come to terms with these things in your youth rather than early adulthood, you know, what a head start that is. And we both just got a little teary-eyed, you know, thinking that it might actually happen. It's the most thrilling thing to watch these kids go through that and to feel like we gave them that opportunity.
About Face plans a tour of the production to Chicago area high schools. Next up for the young company, the world premiere of Dancer from the Dance, an adaptation of an Andrew Holleran novel. This is Tanya Barfield for In the Life.
Let's come out and dispel the rumors and lies that are being spread about us. Let's come out and set everybody straight, so to speak. Hi, I'm Martina Navratilova, and you are watching In the Life.
Mr. Gus Van Sant.
Last July, Katie Lang presented openly gay director Gus Van Sant with a special award honoring his cinematic contributions to queer culture at OutFest '99, the Los Angeles Lesbian and Gay Film Festival. Van Sant, perhaps best known for directing Good Will Hunting and the remake of Psycho, came to the attention of gay audiences with My Own Private Idaho and Malinoche.
In 1987, as was mentioned before, my film Malinoche opened the LA Lesbian and Gay Film Festival, and as a result, some of the critics gave me the LA Film Critics Award for the best independent experimental film. And if you just left off the experimental part, it was the best independent film of that year. And
in August, the Gay and Lesbian Medical Association held its 17th annual symposium in San Diego. Since 1981, GLMA has worked to fight anti-gay bias within the medical profession and to promote quality health care for the gay community. Former U.S. Surgeon General Jocelyn Elders delivered the opening address.
Of course, we have to realize that the primary people who have HIV disease now are poor, black, and uneducated.
In Chicago, Tipper Gore and Kristen Johnson appeared as guest speakers at the 10th annual Human Rights Campaign Illinois Dinner Dance. This year, the annual benefit raised $150,000 for HRC, the nation's largest gay and lesbian political organization. Mrs. Gore spoke about the challenges facing gays and lesbians, stressing the importance of inclusivity, equal rights, and of course, the upcoming elections.
All people, regardless of sexual orientation, should be able to be part of a loving relationship and raise a family without fear of recrimination or discrimination.
Still to come on In the Life.
Teen flicks with a twist as high school life becomes the setting for lesbian and gay films. And from the In the Life archives, a day in the life of Peter Worth.
But first, Paul Mueller with a story which we call Out on Frat Row.
The college institution, for many, the first step after leaving home, but also a place to develop a sexual identity. Brotherhood, friendship, and a chance to belong are just some of the promises offered young men by college fraternities. But for gay men coming out, life inside that traditionally homophobic institution is beginning to change.
I didn't plan to join a fraternity,
But once I met the guys in my fraternity, I was just like, well, this is what's right for me.
Justin Friedman Hurwitz isn't your traditional frat boy. Sure, he likes to party and hang out with the guys, but he's gay and not afraid of sharing that with his brothers.
I didn't exactly hide it, whereas I didn't exactly tell everybody about it. Like, guys just started asking me about it. Like, nobody had any problem with it.
Every national fraternity has had gay brothers within their ranks, and I think that's very hard for a lot of straight men who may be homophobic to understand.
Shane Windmeyer has had first-hand experience not only as a gay brother himself, but as the author of Out on Frat Row, a chronicle of what it's like to be gay and Greek. Part of that life, he says, is the cycle of invisibility. Gay brothers are there, he says, many of them too afraid to come out. And this fear, he concludes, creates a missed opportunity.
Homophobia creates that fear and ignorance that keeps a straight brother from understanding his own identity and being comfortable with being straight and his sexuality, because he's constantly afraid of the unknown.
Afraid of the unknown, as seen in the recently released film Defying Gravity, a movie about how one fraternity brother is able to live undetected in two divergent worlds.
Briquettes, Griffith. Briquettes. I don't know about you, but I like my meat well done, Mr. Social Chairman. Don't you mean well hung, Buchanan? That's what it is. Hey, check this out, Gary.
But fortunately for Justin Friedman Hurwitz, his sexuality is out in the open ever since he put a pride sticker in his room in January.
Like, the guys in my house are just really, really progressive, really way ahead of their time. The probability for me to get into a house that accepts me so readily was not very large at all.
The first time he ever said anything, I was sitting in a room one Monday night just hanging out, and he just happened to mention something about some guy he was seeing. You know, it wasn't a big deal. Like, it was something we all kind of knew, and it just didn't really matter. You know, it didn't make a difference. He was still Justin.
But Justin is not only a brother and the Rush Chair, the person ultimately responsible for the growth of the chapter, he's also an educator.
Like, I've just kind of accepted a role as kind of like the advisor on the subject, you know what I mean?
And although Justin is not the first gay member of his fraternity, he is the first to be out, and his brothers say this does nothing but help the brotherhood.
What Justin and what the other gay members of our house bring is something that other houses don't have, you know? Diversity builds, you know, it builds strength, and you have different perspectives on things. And I think that having gay brothers can only help us. I'd hope we'd all be secure enough in our masculinity at this point to deal with it.
A straight brother like Rick Ferretti, whose experiences with gay friends has opened his mind and taken away that fear.
You could benefit from any brother based upon whether they're heterosexual or homosexual. As long as they have something to contribute, I'm not going to drop a friend just because I'm afraid that I may lose 2 or 3 others because they're uncomfortable that I'm friends with someone who's gay.
But on the other hand, Windmeyer admits, most fraternities fear what could happen.
What's the big deal? It's not like he lives at the house anymore. Moved out. Adios. Goodbye.
Well, that's one angle. We can totally distance ourselves.
Wait a minute, guys. We can't just ignore this.
He's a fag, Bentley.
How do you know, Jonesy? Did you f*** him?
There have been a number of fraternities on campuses from local chapters that if they were known to have a gay member, it would be very easy for the rest of the fraternity chapters to brand them as a gay fraternity, and it hurts their rush efforts, it hurts alumni efforts, and before you know it, they're gone from that campus.
If there are people who are gonna brand us a gay fraternity and not want to hang out with us or not want to join because of that, then I don't necessarily want to hang out with them, you know?
You're going to hear the comments made, you know, you tease one brother who teases another just to simply make the comment. And deep down inside, I guess, they're not really comfortable with themselves.
But there is an alternative for gay students who want to be a part of the Greek system. Delta Lambda Phi, the nation's only gay fraternity. On many campuses, if you want to be Greek and out, joining a gay fraternity may be your best bet. With over 19 chapters and 1,200 members, Delta Lambda Phi allows gay, bisexual, and progressive men to experience brotherhood in a safe and supportive environment.
I had tried to join a traditional fraternity. I was told by one that being openly gay was just not going to fly at all because they didn't want me to desanctify their letters. They were afraid that I would be like a threat to their unified image.
So rather than join a traditional heterosexual fraternity and be stuck in the closet, David decided not to live a lie. He'd heard about Delta Lambda Phi, and since there wasn't a chapter at Western Michigan University, he started one.
They don't have to fear being who they want to be or who they are. when you're with us. Gay and bisexual and progressive heterosexual men have issues that, you know, a homophobic heterosexual in a traditional fraternity is not going to be able to deal with.
We need to have an alternative to the traditional straight type of fraternity.
Winmeyer says the door is wide open for discrimination against gay brothers in the traditional fraternities.
There are only a handful of national fraternities that have sexual orientation included in their non-discrimination statements.
And he says there are fewer which provide information on what to do if a brother is gay.
There's a lot of lack of leadership from our national fraternities when it comes to providing resources and materials to kind of break down the closet door of college Greeks.
As open as a fraternity may say they are about gays or bisexual men, there's always going to be several members that are going to harass the person or give them flack.
If someone was rushing our fraternity and going through the pledge process, and later that wound up coming out, they probably wouldn't be accepted anymore.
Why not?
It's just, you just follow the norms. That's just the whole image of a fraternity.
An image that, once a gay man enters the picture, continues to foster some misconceptions.
A gay man does not join a fraternity to get a date. He doesn't join a fraternity to redecorate the house. You know, he doesn't join a fraternity to play touch football. He joins for the same reasons as does any other fraternity man, and that's for the social aspects, it's for the brotherhood and the sense of belonging.
I think most guys are pretty comfortable around me because they already know that I'm not just gonna I'm not gonna try to rob them of their masculinity in the middle of the night or anything like that, you know. Like it's all about people that you trust, and the reason that people are scared about homosexuals or gay men or whatever is because they don't know what they're all about.
The whole ideal brotherhood can overcome homophobia, that if you have a strong brotherhood in a chapter, then you can overcome someone coming out, or you can rush someone who's openly gay.
And as two young men, one gay, one straight, prepare to leave college with a strong sense of what brotherhood is really all about.
If I can influence one or two individuals and change their outlook on someone that may be homosexual, then that's the best I can do.
I've always just been welcomed and accepted, and I just want it to be like that for everybody. If I can help foster a legacy of understandingness and open-mindedness here at my fraternity, I think I've left here done a very good thing.
Another sign that things are changing on American campuses. Sigma Phi Epsilon, one of the nation's largest fraternities, just added sexual orientation to its non-discrimination clause in its national bylaws.
Fostering a sense of community and bringing people together, whether in a theater, on a campus, or even on the web, is an empowering experience and important for those who might at times feel isolated. The Lambda 10 project, housed at Indiana University, is a national clearinghouse for educational resources and materials relating to the experiences of gay, lesbian, and bisexual students in fraternities and sororities. For an online link to the Lambda 10 project and other resources, visit us at www.inthelifetv.org. This is Michael Mayer for In the Life.
In the 1980s, a number of filmmakers made their mark with movies about the loneliness and heartache of being a teenage outsider. The standard storyline goes something like this. Dorky teen falls for popular athlete or cheerleader, goes through some changes, and ultimately finds love and self-awareness. But with young people coming out at earlier ages and the general success of gay-themed films, a new generation of directors are putting their own spin on this popular teen flick genre.
I was really inspired by a lot of the films that I grew up with as a kid, you know, like the John Hughes trilogy, Pretty in Pink and 16 Candles and The Breakfast Club. I think it's important for gay kids to see their lives reflected on screen.
You have a girlfriend?
Yeah. His name's Danny.
Screenwriter Todd Stevens used his own coming out experience in the 80s as the basis for the film Edge of 17, which was shot on location in his hometown of Sandusky, Ohio.
It was just so personal that I just kind of wanted to make it like as real as we could, and you know, going back to Sandusky definitely helped with that, I think.
Did you put on my cologne? No. I mean, I opened it up. I wanted to see what it smelled like. You did.
Unbelievably, I think Edge of 17 is one of the first movies to address coming out in suburban America.
I just don't want people getting the wrong idea.
What idea?
People think you're gay.
Is that what you want to know?
I was very impressed that this character really hit it head on. He dove into it and came out of it on the other side, you know, certainly not unscathed, but very much for the, you know, better off.
I guess I thought if I came out, everything would get easier.
The main sort of theme of the film is acceptance, you know, accepting yourself and sort of being accepted for who you are. So I guess the main thing that I want people to walk away with is be true to yourself.
What's wrong with me?
The British film Get Real, released earlier this year, depicts similar issues of isolation and acceptance in a small town outside of London.
It's all right.
I think it's probably easier to be gay today than it ever has been if you live in a big city. I think that probably applies for the States as well as the UK. My personal take on it is that it's no easier than it ever was to come out.
Yeah, but when Kevin called you queer the other day, you denied it. If you really do like being... I mean, how can you really like yourself if you deny what you are?
Why? Let's tell everyone then.
No, don't you dare!
I mean, there was one particular boy in the town, in Basingstoke, in the town where we filmed it, who we were sitting around talking about the plot of the film and so on, and he said, that sounds like me. I'm 16 and I'm gay, and my best friend is the girl who lives next door.
John Dixon.
It's my lover. If he was my girlfriend, he could be here with me.
He told us that there was absolutely nowhere for him to go for advice, I mean, there was no telephone number on a notice board that he could call up and talk to someone. There are certainly no gay clubs or bars or anything. And part of what we're trying to say is that it's because of that kind of climate that kids have to do things like hang out in men's room and meet people in the woods, which is potentially putting them in danger.
Stephen, what were you doing in those woods?
It's just a laugh. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're sorry. You're sorry. You heard what he said. How can you have been such a stupid sod?
Graham.
Well, use your imagination. He could have been molested by some dirty old queer. God, the thought of it makes me sick. What on God's earth possessed you?
Well, where else were we supposed to go?
We wanted to show by the end of the film that it was intolerable for him not to come out and to make a mainstream audience understand that.
Mainstream audiences in Sweden made Show Me Love one of the top-grossing movies of the year. The film tells the story of Agnes, a young outcast who falls for Ellen, a popular but troubled girl at her school.
Hej. Är det ledigt här? Varför är du så konstig? Eller alltså, jag menar inget dumt, men du är konstig. Du är också konstig. Är jag? Ja.
Director Lucas Moodysson wanted to make a film that would be authentic to the experiences of teenagers, told from their point of view.
Elin? Det är Agnes. Hallå? Varför kan du inte bara säga vem det är? hatar inte, det är så jävla... Du skulle hata mig, du skulle aldrig mer prata med mig.
While the previous three works strive to present a realistic picture of what it's like to grow up gay, this next film, But I'm a Cheerleader, uses broad satire to tackle issues such as outing, gender stereotypes, and even the ex-gay movement.
You're turning into a pretty young lady. Now hold still.
Honey, we think you're a lesbian. This is the story of Megan, who is a cheerleader and who's gay and doesn't know it. And so her family and friends out her, and her parents send her off to Make You Straight camp, which doesn't work.
Set. Action.
I decided to make the lead character a cheerleader because when you think about the antithesis of what you would consider to be a lesbian, a cheerleader is certainly one of those stereotypes that you don't think of as being a lesbian. And I really wanted the film to be about gender constructs and stereotypes.
I myself was once a gay. Now I'm an ex-gay, Megan. I work for a place called True Directions who help people like yourself learn to understand the reasons behind homosexual tendencies and how to heal them.
There are a lot of ads that have been running in the San Francisco Examiner and across the country about the ex-gay ministry. They've had kind of a resurgence lately. Exodus and all these other groups put out these ridiculous videotapes about the gay agenda and things like that. And so I always wanted to do something to kind of counter that.
Well, I definitely want people to have a good time and laugh. That's really important to me, that they think it's funny. I also want them to come away realizing how absurd these ex-gay camps are.
But I'd like it to be one of those movies that you leave, and instead of talking about whether you like the production design or not, you're talking about the issues and you get involved in a conversation.
Today's teenagers are tomorrow's parents. So I hope not just my film, but films like this will make them think sort of 15 years down the line, if they have a gay kid, then they might understand a bit more than certainly my parents did.
We look so good, we look so good, we look so good together. And we are underground, we are underground, we are underground. And we don't care, we don't care, we don't care what you say about us.
We'd like to end this episode with a segment from the In the Life archives that originally aired in 1996. It's the story of 81-year-old Peter Worth, a lesbian whose own life spanned much of the 20th century and who saw and survived her share of politics and prejudice. For half a century, Peter lived in Cherry Grove, home to a predominantly gay community on Fire Island, New York. Sadly, Peter passed away shortly after we broadcast our story. But her courage and her charisma will never be forgotten by all of those, including myself, who had the honor to meet her. In her memory, we revisit a day in the life of Peter Worth. I visited Peter on Fire Island and asked her about her life and her very early coming out.
I was about 14, and I read a book that I didn't understand, and I asked a friend what this was all about. And she told me there are women who love women instead of men. And we figured out that must be the case with me.
How did you know at 14, like what made you feel different?
Well, I always wanted to dress a little differently. You know, I like ties and stuff like that. And but otherwise, I always had crushes on women, but that was, I think, lots of girls have that, no? Teachers and all that, movie stars and stuff like that. Yeah.
Were there images of gays and lesbians at that time?
Yes, well, I discovered a bar much later, 2 or 3 years later, and in the window they had pictures of women who looked like men, you know, very short hair and monocle, something like that. So I thought, and I went out.
After Hitler took power in Germany, there were no gay bars, right?
No, at first there were none. And then they opened up one thing and they had a sign up. It was just for women. And I mean, I'm stupid enough to do it because I wanted to go.
And this was a government-owned gay bar?
Well, I mean, it was under Hitler. Everything belonged to Hitler.
So, and what happened? Wasn't there was a raid or something?
Yes, I went with this girl. And about 5 minutes later, there were about 6 or 8 policemen, but not in uniform, and, you know. And they said, pay up for your drinks and get out. And there was a big, big van, and it took us to the main police station in Berlin. And they had me registered there as being a registered resident. So they didn't ask me anything. They just let me go.
They let you go without?
Yeah.
But they now had your name as somebody who went to a gay bar.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Were you scared?
Yes.
To escape Hitler's Germany, Peter traveled to Paris to meet her mother, only to discover that in 1939, all Germans were considered by the French to be potential spies. She was then placed in a French prisoner of war camp. What was your worst memory of that time?
Well, they didn't really feed us, so to speak. You know, they gave us what was called pois chiche, and once a week we got something, some potato or something like that. And that was very unpleasant.
During this experience in prison, Peter actually met one other gay woman, and immediately following her release, met up with her in Cannes. After being in this prisoner of war camp, you went to Cannes?
I met her right away, right away.
How long were you with her in Cannes?
Not too long, because she had a friend there. I mean, no, you know, it wasn't supposed to be.
Not long after, Peter left on one of the few remaining boats carrying refugees, bound for the United States. Here she discovered gay New York and gay hideaways. Well, after first going to the wrong beach.
I said, Betty, I didn't see anything. There was a certain bar, but... And she said, well, you went to Ocean Beach. And I said, yes, you said that's where I should go. And she said, well, I went to Cherry Grove. And I said, let me have that address. And that was it. I've been here every summer, every summer.
And how many summers is that?
The first time I was here was 46.
So you've been here 50 years?
Yes, because it was 46 and 90. Oh,
happy anniversary.
Thank you. I'm always happy when I get out here. So this is it. Because I don't want to be anywhere else.
Why?
I like to be surrounded by my own kind, you know.
What keeps you going?
I lived like everybody else, right? I knew quite a few lesbians and quite a few homosexuals. And didn't bother with anybody else, nor did they bother with me. I lived what I thought was a normal life.
From all of us at In the Life, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Geek.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Emmeringen Foundation. Additional support provided by Michael A. Leppin, Jeffrey B. Soroff, the Gill Foundation, the Lily Auchincloss Foundation, the Michael Palm Foundation, the Arch and Bruce Brown Foundation, the Mitchell Gold Company, in the hopes of eliminating all types of fear and prejudice, and the annual support of In the Life members like you.